In today's world of compact four-cylinder economy cars, you could pretty much look in any corner of the globe and find exactly what it is that you're looking for. But unfortunately, cars like that fall into one of two categories. On the lower end of things, you have cars that don't really offer much and just do their job of getting you from A to B. But on the polar opposite end of the spectrum, you have cars that will thrill every single nerve in your body with hardcore, track-focused, enthusiast-driven performance, and they will also put a pretty hefty dent in your wallet as fast as they will go. So is it possible that you could take some of the attributes from some of those better high-performance cars and trickle them down into a more affordable package for the everyday driver? Yeah, I'd say it's possible.
Tell me if you're hurt and I'll be there. Carry you away to the promised land. Feel your heartbeat and don't be scared, 'cause I'll be there. Yes, I'll be there. You and I, we can fly anywhere you wanna go. Find a place we can hide, we can make it on our own.
You know, whether you're a daily driver or you're an enthusiast like me, whenever somebody comes up to you and says, I drive a Toyota Corolla, well, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue in the nicest way now, does it? And most often, regardless of who you talk to, when you say something like that, people often think, oh, I just drive some beige, boring, base model, ex-rental car, simple yet reliable piece of transportation. And that may be true in most cases, but if you're in the know, the Corolla does have quite the illustrious history, and throughout its rough beige history, there have still been some diamonds that have shown up. And the most famous of which, you guessed it, it's the black and white Panda that was used to deliver tofu, now wasn't it? Yep, I'm talking about the infamous Hachiroku, the rear-wheel drive, high-revving drift missile that so many a Japanese man, woman, and child knew all about throughout the entirety of the 80s. And while this 2023 Corolla XSE 4-door feels absolutely nothing like that, it almost feels like a much more modernized yet much more dumbed down version of another personal Corolla favorite of mine, which was the 2005 to 2006 Corolla XRS. Now, unlike the Hachiroku and also unlike this car, the XRS came with a 1.8 liter four-cylinder, which didn't just include VVT with intelligence, it had a clever valve lift system that allowed it to rev to, instead of 6,500 RPMs like a Corolla S, it could rev to almost 9 grand. And even better, it was the only Corolla of its time in which you could get a 6-speed manual transmission. Now you can still get a 6-speed manual in the current Corolla, but I'll be honest, it really doesn't feel like the same thing. It doesn't feel as sharp or as snappy, and it really just kind of begs the statement, they just don't build them like they used to. So in that regard, what does the new boy drive like? Well, to be honest, like I said, it still does remind me of the XRS in a couple of different ways. Number one, we have a sport suspension under here, which makes you feel absolutely everything from the smallest of pebbles down to the biggest of potholes that could turn your spine into dust. It also has a pretty sprightly 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, which in the right modes can actually be quite fun. At the same time, however, this entire car is let down by one thing. In the name of efficiency, which the XSE does get over 40 miles to the gallon in the right aspect, this thing has a CVT transmission. And yes, it has a solid first gear, which does help you get out of the hole a little bit more, but when you get out on the freeway, unless you're in sport mode with your foot almost welded to the firewall, this thing does not feel like it has any sense of playfulness in a straight line. But the other thing that's sort of been nagging at me a little bit is the fact that you would think in this car, it's not meant to be a point, shoot, hit the gas like touring car, but you would think it would be a little bit more responsive in the way that you can control it. The steering, like just off center, is wayward. It's kind of numb in a way. And yes, I know it's a narrow, short wheelbase car, but at the same time, it just doesn't feel like it gives me all the communication that I could possibly want. And in that regard as well, when you do give it a little bit more input, you will start to feel something. The steering does weight up beautifully, but just off center, if I'm just making slight maneuvers or if I'm just driving around town, it doesn't really inspire much confidence, and that's not something I think Toyota wants when they call their car the Extreme Sports Edition. But let's be real here, I can't dog this thing too much because unlike its predecessors and even the newer ones like the new GR Corolla, this thing is meant to be the best of everything. It's meant to be a relaxed, efficient daily driver that just makes you feel better about yourself. And you certainly will feel better when you find out that all in, this thing is less than 30 grand, which is not a bad value when you consider that an equivalent Honda Civic Touring, or maybe even a Civic Si, is well over $30,000 at this point. So, if you are somebody who's looking for value out of your hotter version of your economy car, this is definitely a good solid choice. Now, while some might still consider the Corolla's performance to be that of a total economy car, there is no denying that for an XSE version like this, it is trying to put on a serious act to follow. And to me, it honestly looks like someone took an ordinary Corolla and put it through a hefty dose of Need for Speed Underground treatment. And I say that because not only do we have the more aggressive bodywork, but in this case, it's quite apt with the underground gray paintwork. A completely flat gray, no metallic in it whatsoever, but it's still light enough to where you can differentiate it from the metallic black pieces here on the sides and even the gloss black for the large opening here in the center grille, which kind of has more of a fish-like look, but then again, it's wide open. It can gulp in all the air at once. And now for 23, we also have these beautifully sculpted headlights. I've always thought the headlight design on this newest generation Corolla was very aggressive, but they've made it even more so with these large LED turn signals. The headlights themselves, all LED, and of course you do have auto high beam assist thrown in as well. Not to mention, for under 30 grand, you get quite a lot of tech here on the outside as well with the newest Toyota Safety Sense System 3.0. You have the lane following assist, forward collision warning, adaptive radar cruise control, you name it. The only thing that's missing from this car is any kind of intuitive park assist. And while the Corolla to many eyes looks pretty small from a distance, there is one fact that may come as a surprise. This car at 182.5 inches long is 5.5 inches longer than a Lexus UX crossover, the smallest crossover that Toyota's luxury sibling actually makes, which is also pretty surprising considering that the Corolla, in one form or another, is one of the smallest cars that Toyota offers here in the United States. Now, aside from that, while the styling is quite aggressive in most cases, there is one little gripe that I have to bring up here, which is actually the choice of wheels here. Now, I don't mind the design. I absolutely love these, but with the underground gray mixed with these dark finish 18-inch alloys, it looks a little bit one-noted to me. If this car was in like white or red, I think the dark gray wheels would offset them quite naturally, but at the same time, still wrapped in some pretty easygoing summer performance tires, measuring 225/40 series in all four corners. Now, for less than 30 grand, you would expect to get at least some features, but probably not as much as even more than what we've talked about just here at the front with the Toyota Safety Sense 3.0. Check this out, for example. You've got LED turn signals on the sides. The mirrors are integrated with blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, already included in the price. You get a standard size sunroof up top. It would have been neat, actually, maybe not with the gray, but like with something like white, to have an offset black roof, maybe going from the A pillar all the way back to the C pillar. Just a nice little aesthetic thought. But you also get Toyota's advanced keyless access as standard on a lot of the higher up models like this. I still think the key fob is just a little bit bland with nothing on the back and everything on the front, like lock, unlock, trunk, panic. You've got the nice little Toyota badge and the releasable key blade that allows you to gain access to the car should either the key or the car go dead. But either way, it still has the same touch points on the door to lock and unlock it. So just keep the key on you. You grab the handle to unlock. And if you want to lock it, there's the little ribs on the front and you just lay your finger to it. And in a similar fashion to this car's performance, the rear of the Corolla doesn't quite sing as angry of a tune as its front face would suggest. It's a little more subtle than that. However, Toyota still did include all the styling cues to make sure people know that you are driving one of the more quote-unquote hotter Corollas out there. And they didn't just do that by making the XSE badge red. They've given you the black metallic spoiler. You've got the black lip that connects the taillights in the middle. You've got this huge gloss black diffuser across the bottom. And to finish it all off, you have a nice twin-tipped exhaust, which doesn't exactly sound bad, but it doesn't sound great either. And don't be expecting any kind of crazy technology back here either. Just as the case was in the front, there's no kind of rear park assist on this thing, and more obviously, being that this is nowhere near a crossover, there is no hands-free trunk access. So you can just walk up to the trunk and either use the key or use the little pull latch underneath, and once you open it up, you reveal the smallest cargo capacity out of the current Corolla trio. At just over 13 cubic feet for the sedan, it's a decent sized gap compared to the Corolla hatchback at 17.9 cubic feet. However, the gap widens even further when you up the game to the Corolla Cross, which with its rear seats up measures at just over 21.5 cubic feet of cargo volume. Now, speaking of rear seats up, you can fold the back seats of this Corolla sedan down, thus increasing your space a little bit. But on initial impressions, if you're looking for the most practical or the biggest Corolla rear space, well, this ain't gonna be it. Now, while the outside of the Corolla may be putting on a little bit more of an aggressive face, especially in a version like we have here, under the skin, it is still more of a bare bones car. Don't expect to be getting all the luxury toys and technology you could possibly want. However, that being said, Toyota has gone through this car's interior, making upgrades and changes and sort of fine-tooth combing a few things to make it a little bit more of a pleasing environment to be in. The only thing that's really not pleasing, at least to taller people like myself, is the amount of adjustments you will have to make in order to make yourself comfortable. And if you are taller, well, it is going to come at the expense of your backseat passengers. More on that to come later. For starters, right in front of you, you've got a leather wrap steering wheel, which is not heated, and honestly, I could care less. It does come with the paddles to help control the manual mode for the CVT, which honestly is kind of nice, even though you don't really notice that much while you're driving, like I said. And even down to things like the seats. I love the red stripes on this one to give it more of that sportier attitude, but they're comprised of like a leatherette type material. So, I mean, they're comfortable. They sort of hug you in the right places, but they're not as, I guess, huggable in a way. They don't kind of squeeze you like some more sportier seats, and they are heated, but I know for a little bit of an extra charge in some cars in this same category, you can actually get ventilated seats. But again, for under 30 grand, you kind of get what you pay for in here. Now, if at this point in time you're still thinking about hurling insults at this car, well, you might want to hold off on those for just a bit, because some of the things Toyota has done to upgrade this car's interior are actually very much needed. To begin with, staring right in front of me, I'm kind of getting Volkswagen vibes just a little bit, because we now have a completely digital gauge cluster. No more half analog with a half-baked digital display in the middle. This is now completely digital with one central display containing every piece of information you could want. On top of that, coming back to the steering wheel, some of the buttons have changed just a little bit. You still have a lot of the obvious ones like your aero pad, Bluetooth, voice recognition, the dynamic radar cruise control, and so on. But up here in the upper right, there is now a button that controls your proactive driving assist, and it controls your lane tracing, which means you can now set that to follow all the lines in the road and keep this car dead center while you're driving down the street. And honestly, just little touches like that start to mean that for under $30,000, need I remind you again, there is still quite a lot going on here. Now, if there's one upgrade in this car that I am genuinely thankful for, and I know most people will agree with me on this, it is right here. Although the presentation of it does seem a little bit of a letdown, because we only have an 8-inch touchscreen, small, just like pretty much everything else in this car. But the big deal is that Toyota has finally given us their new Highlights infotainment system completely. And it has everything, wireless Android Auto and CarPlay. So as long as your phone has a Wi-Fi connection, you can go straight into Android Auto or CarPlay without any worry. And if you don't want to be in your smartphone connection, you can go straight back to the Toyota Highlights system itself, which has all the same icons. Your navigation, which is subscription based, which is a bit disappointing. I would have expected maybe you would have had it built in, but that's just something that's kind of a nitpick of mine. You have audio, Bluetooth phone, vehicle settings, and of course general settings, to where you can pretty much customize everything to your heart's content. You do have a backup camera in this case as well. pretty typical, but like I said, it doesn't include any kind of park assist, so you will have to rely on the camera to judge distance at your own will. You can hear it as the automatic door locks as well, just as a side note. And the cool part about this system is that as an option in this case, we have a 9-speaker JBL audio system. Now we know, or at least I know, that JBL does make some damn good audio systems when it comes to even their smallest offerings like this. And to cram 9 speakers, including 2 huge ones on the back trunk deck, into such a small car should equate to something pretty serious. Now, with this car being as small as it is, it really doesn't need the biggest of everything. Take, for example, the climate control. The buttons down here are as big as the tip of my pinky finger, and it is a single zone system. Plenty enough AC to heat or cool the entire cabin. Speaking of cool, however, along with that JBL audio system, you do get an optional wireless charger, which is actually hidden way up under the dash. I mean, I need my phone to pretty much go anywhere nowadays, and knowing that I have the potential of leaving it in this car because the charger is hidden so far away, that is a little bit concerning, and it's hidden alongside your heated seat controls as well. Everything else in here is just, again, bare bones. Your shifter with the drive mode select right in front of it, 2 decently sized cup holders, your parking brake, and it's really about it. Not much else to say about that. Now, let's be real here. If you're actually expecting this Corolla to fit 5 people comfortably in it, well, you can at least fit 2 up front. But as for the rear seats, I would say this is really more of a 4-person car. That being said, however, I have the driver's seat exactly where I want it, and as you can see in certain seating positions, my knees actually don't even touch the back of the front seat. That was the first shock. The other one was not only how low this car is, and if you are someone of my height, around 6 foot or so, you probably are going to whack your head coming in here because the door frame is quite low. That said, once you sit back here, the headliner is actually indented, so I actually have enough room to actually sit pretty much bolt upright. On the other hand, however, the seats also sit higher, so now you can see pretty much everything that's around you despite being in such a narrow space. If you are one to sit back here as well, however, you have 2 USB-C chargers, and you also have a hidden center console with 2 decently sized cup holders. Now, would I say I take this car on a road trip or be in the back of one for some decent amount of time? Probably not. But if you are somebody who's a little bit taller and you're expecting to have any kind of space back here, well, you might actually have it. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this now wraps up our review and drive of the 2023 Toyota Corolla XSE. Now, it's pretty obvious from what we've seen today, this thing is never going to be another GR Corolla. It's not all-wheel drive. It's not some track-focused, snarling, growling monster. However, it is affordable, it's efficient, it's relatively fun to drive in its own right, and it actually looks pretty good for a car of this price point. Also, one thing I recommend, if you enjoyed this video today, or perhaps you learned something about the 2023 Corolla today, please give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, I always appreciate the support, and I want to continue with more opportunities like what Toyota USA has given us this week. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.